The 5 fatal mistakes that destroy great men. Machiavelli's warning: there are mistakes that history books won't teach you. They're not written in laws or painted on monuments. They're whispered in the shadows of fallen empires, carved into the bones of men who once commanded respect but died forgotten. These are the mistakes that don't announce themselves with fanfare. They creep in quietly, like poison in wine, sweet at first taste but lethal in the end. You think you're building something eternal. You think your success is untouchable. You think your reputation is bulletproof. But Niccolò Machiavelli knew better. He saw through the illusions that comfort the powerful. He watched kingdoms crumble not from external invasion, but from internal rot. He witnessed great men fall not because they were weak, but because they made fatal errors in judgment. Errors that could have been avoided. Errors that you might be making right now. Music builds slightly today. We're going to examine 5 fatal mistakes that destroy great men. Not the obvious ones, not greed, not pride, not lust for power. These are subtler, more dangerous, more common. If you've ever wondered why successful people suddenly collapse, why respected leaders lose everything overnight, why men who seemed invincible become cautionary tales, then this message is for you. Because sometimes the greatest threat to a man's empire isn't his enemies, it's his own blind spots. Mistake number 1. Confusing popularity with power. The first fatal mistake is the most seductive. It's the belief that being liked equals being powerful. That applause means security. That popularity is a shield against downfall. Machiavelli watched this delusion destroy more leaders than any army ever could. You see it everywhere. The executive who makes decisions based on what his team wants to hear. The entrepreneur who chases trends instead of building foundations. The leader who mistakes temporary approval for permanent authority. They think they're being wise. They think they're being strategic. But they're actually surrendering their power one smile at a time. Here's what Machiavelli understood. Popularity is weather. It changes with the wind. Today's hero becomes tomorrow's villain with nothing more than a shift in public mood, a change in circumstances, or a more charismatic voice in the crowd. The man who builds his empire on applause discovers that applause has no loyalty. The crowd that cheers you today will stone you tomorrow if it serves their interests. Real power doesn't come from being loved. It comes from being necessary, from being irreplaceable, from controlling something that others need but cannot get elsewhere. Think about it. The teacher who lets students choose their own grades isn't popular. He's powerless. The boss who never says no isn't beloved. He's irrelevant. The leader who shapes every decision around public opinion isn't democratic. He is a slave to the masses. Machiavelli warned, the man who seeks to be loved by all will be respected by none. Because respect isn't earned through kindness, it's earned through consistency, through strength, through the ability to make hard decisions when they need to be made. The fatal mistake isn't caring about others, it's caring more about their approval than about your mission. It's choosing the applause over the outcome, it's picking the smile over the strategy. So ask yourself, are you making decisions based on what's right, or based on what's popular? Are you building something that lasts, or something that gets likes? Because the moment you start measuring your power by the warmth of the crowd, you've already begun to lose it. The moment you need their approval to act, you're no longer the leader, you're a performer. And performers, no matter how skilled, are always replaceable. Mistake number 2, believing your own propaganda. The second fatal mistake is even more dangerous. Because it feels like success, it's the moment when you start believing your own hype. When your own propaganda becomes your reality. Machiavelli saw this destroy princes who had everything. They started reading their own press releases. They began thinking their victories were inevitable, their genius unquestionable, their judgment infallible. They stopped listening to criticism. They stopped questioning their assumptions. They stopped preparing for failure because they couldn't imagine it happening to them. This is how empires fall. Not through external conquest, but through internal delusion. You've seen it. The successful businessman who thinks he can't fail and stops doing due diligence. The leader who surrounds himself with yes men until he loses touch with reality. The expert who becomes so convinced of his own brilliance that he stops learning. They mistake past success for future guarantee. They confuse their track record with their destiny. They start believing that their wins came from some inherent superiority rather than from preparation, timing, and luck. Machiavelli would tell you, the man who believes he cannot fall is already falling. Because the moment you stop expecting failure, you stop preparing for it. And the moment you stop preparing, you become vulnerable to forces you never saw coming. The fatal mistake isn't confidence, it's certainty. It's the belief that what worked before will always work, that your methods are perfect, that your understanding is complete. But the world changes, markets shift, people evolve. What made you successful yesterday might make you irrelevant tomorrow. The wise leader knows that his success is temporary. His methods are experimental. His understanding is limited. He treats every victory as a lesson, not a diploma. He knows that the moment he stops learning, he starts dying. So here's the test. When was the last time you changed your mind about something important? When was the last time you admitted you were wrong? When was the last time you sought out criticism instead of praise? If you can't answer those questions, you're not confident. You're delusional. And delusion, no matter how pleasant, is always temporary. The world has a way of humbling those who think they're above humility. And when that humbling comes, it's often swift, brutal, and final. Mistake number 3. Treating loyalty as a given. The third fatal mistake is perhaps the most heartbreaking. It's the assumption that loyalty is permanent, that the people who stand with you today will stand with you tomorrow, that past allegiance guarantees future support. Machiavelli knew this was the cruelest illusion of all. Loyalty isn't a contract, it's a feeling, and feelings change. The lieutenant who would die for you today might betray you tomorrow if the circumstances shift. The ally who calls you brother might sell you out if the price is right. This isn't cynicism, it's reality. And the leader who doesn't understand this reality is walking into a trap. You see it in every field. The business partner who becomes a competitor. The trusted advisor who leaks your secrets. The loyal employee who joins your rival for a better offer. They're not necessarily evil. They're human. And humans respond to incentives, pressures, and opportunities. The loyalty that seemed absolute was actually conditional. You just didn't know what the conditions were. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are more concerned with their own interests than with your needs." This doesn't make them monsters, it makes them predictable. The fatal mistake is not understanding their predictability. The wise leader doesn't eliminate loyalty. He manages it. He creates systems where loyalty is rewarded and betrayal is costly. He builds structures where people's interests align with his own. He understands that loyalty is earned daily, not purchased permanently. But the deluded leader treats loyalty like a bank account. He thinks he can make a deposit and live off the interest forever. He stops nurturing relationships. He stops proving his worth. He stops making loyalty attractive. And then he's shocked when people leave. He's devastated when allies switch sides. He's confused when his inner circle becomes his greatest threat. Here's what you need to understand. Loyalty without incentive is just sentiment. And sentiment, while beautiful, is not reliable. It's not strategic. It's not sustainable. The fatal mistake isn't expecting loyalty. It's expecting it to last without maintenance. It's thinking that past devotion guarantees future support. It's treating human nature as if it were a legal contract. So ask yourself, what are you doing today to earn tomorrow's loyalty? How are you making it profitable for people to support you? What systems do you have in place to reward faithfulness and discourage betrayal? Because the leader who takes loyalty for granted will discover that it was never truly his to begin with, and that discovery usually comes at the worst possible moment. Mistake number 4. Ignoring the power of narrative. The fourth fatal mistake is underestimating the power of story. The belief that facts speak for themselves, that results don't need explanation, that truth doesn't need marketing. Machiavelli understood what modern leaders often forget. Perception shapes reality. The story people tell about you is more important than the truth about you. You can be the most competent person in the room, but if the narrative around you is incompetence, that's your reality. You can be the most ethical leader in history, but if the story is corruption, That's what people will believe. This isn't about manipulation. It's about communication. It's about understanding that humans are storytelling creatures. We don't just process information, we weave it into narratives that make sense of our world. The fatal mistake is thinking that good work speaks for itself, that excellence is self-evident, that results automatically create the right story. But stories aren't created by facts, they're created by interpretation. And if you're not controlling the interpretation, someone else is. Your enemies understand this. They know that a compelling lie often beats a boring truth. They know that emotion matters more than evidence. They know that the person who controls the narrative controls the game. So, while you're focused on doing good work, they're focused on spinning the story. While you're building, they're narrating. While you're achieving, they're explaining those achievements in ways that serve their interests, not yours. Machiavelli would tell you, it is not enough to be great. You must be seen as great by the right people at the right time. Because greatness without recognition is just personal satisfaction. And personal satisfaction doesn't build empires. The wise leader doesn't just do good work. He shapes the story around that work. He doesn't just achieve results. He explains what those results mean. He doesn't just build. He narrates the building process. He understands that every action is also a communication. Every decision is also a statement. Every victory is also a story waiting to be told. So, here's the question. Who is telling your story? Are you actively shaping the narrative around your work, or are you letting others interpret it for you? Because if you're not controlling your story, you're not controlling your destiny. And the man who lets others define him will find himself defined in ways he never intended. Mistake number 5. Failing to prepare for transition. The fifth and final fatal mistake is the most inevitable. It's the failure to prepare for transition, the refusal to plan for the end, the inability to imagine a world where you're no longer in charge. Machiavelli saw this destroy dynasties that could have lasted centuries, leaders who were brilliant at gaining power but clueless about transferring it, men who built empires but couldn't build successors. They treated their position as permanent. They saw themselves as irreplaceable. They couldn't imagine anyone else doing their job, so they never prepared anyone else to do it. This is how great work dies, not from external threats but from internal neglect. The moment the leader is gone, the empire begins to crumble because nobody knows how to hold it together. You see it everywhere. The family business that fails when the founder retires, the organization that collapses when the charismatic leader leaves, the movement that dies when its prophet is no longer there to guide it. The fatal mistake isn't mortality. It's the refusal to accept mortality. It's the belief that you can control your legacy by controlling your lifespan. It's the assumption that what you build will somehow maintain itself. But nothing maintains itself. Everything requires energy, attention, and care. And if you're the only source of that energy, then your creation is just an extension of your life. When you go, it goes. The wise leader understands that his greatest achievement isn't what he builds. It's what continues to grow after he's gone. His legacy isn't his work. It's the people he empowers to carry that work forward. This means teaching others to think like you, training others to lead like you, creating systems that function without you, building cultures that survive beyond you. It means accepting that your successors might do things differently, that they might improve on your methods, that they might even surpass your achievements. The insecure leader sees this as a threat. The wise leader sees it as the ultimate victory. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince who thinks only of today will find that tomorrow thinks nothing of him. Because the present is temporary, the future is eternal. And the man who invests only in the present will find that the present has no patience for his permanence." So ask yourself, if you disappear tomorrow, what would happen to your work? Who would carry it forward? What systems would continue to function? What people would continue to grow? If you can't answer those questions confidently, then you're not building an empire. You're building a monument to yourself. And monuments, no matter how impressive, are just reminders of things that used to be alive. The path forward. These 5 fatal mistakes have destroyed more great men than all the armies in history. They're subtle, they're seductive, They're easy to rationalize, but they're also avoidable. The leader who understands that popularity is temporary will focus on building something permanent. The leader who questions his own assumptions will continue to grow. The leader who nurtures loyalty will retain it. The leader who controls his narrative will control his destiny. The leader who prepares for transition will achieve immortality. This is Machiavelli's warning. This is his gift to you. Not a manual for cruelty, but a guide for clarity. Not a path to domination, but a roadmap to survival. Because in a world where great men fall daily, the greatest achievement isn't reaching the top. It's staying there. It's building something that lasts. It's creating a legacy that outlives you. The choice is yours. Will you learn from these mistakes, or will you become another cautionary tale? Will you be the great man who falls, or the wise man who endures? The answer lies not in your talents, but in your humility. Not in your strength, but in your understanding. Not in your power, but in your preparation. Because the greatest victory isn't conquering your enemies, it's conquering your own fatal mistakes. And that victory, unlike all others, is entirely within your control. Music fades if you've made it this far. You're not here by accident. You're someone who builds, someone who leads, someone who understands that wisdom isn't just knowledge, it is the application of knowledge. Before it is too late, this is your moment, your choice, your opportunity to avoid the mistakes that have destroyed the great men who came before you. Don't waste it.